I'm a big city girl. I was born and raised in New York City. And because I'm a big city girl, I'm always looking to do big things. I don't know why, maybe because I want to stand out from the crowd. That all started when I was born. My mother spent 4 days trying to labor me. And when she finally was able to get the C-section that she needed to have me, she told the nurse that she wanted my name to be Zuleika. And that's what was supposed to show up in my birth certificate. But this is what showed up in my birth certificate. When the lady came back with my birth certificate, it said Jersey Garcia. So my mom didn't want to confront the nurse and just said, just give me my baby, I'm leaving. And she left me with an outstanding name. As I was growing up, I'm also part of a large family. Just my maternal grandmother alone had 19 children. She had 22 pregnancies. And I have more than 60 cousins, probably to the hundreds. Right? There's a lot that I don't know. So you see why I feel like I need to stand out, right? I'm always inside a group, right? I'm always part of a pack. So being part of this pack, my grandmother, again, like I mentioned before, had all these children and was pregnant for so many years. Basically from the late teens to her early 40s, she was pregnant. Every year she was pregnant. She couldn't make decisions and choices for herself. It was basically, the story of her life was basically to just have these children and have the children that she had help her raise those children. My mom had to drop out of school when she was in the 8th grade because my grandfather's parents couldn't afford the pencils and the notebooks to go to school. And my dad had to drop out of school when he was in 5th grade because he had to go to work. He also is from a single mom who had 8 children. So as you see, I told myself I needed to go to college. I wanted, again, to stand out. I decided how I could channel that energy was trying to be the voice or lift the voice of those stories that were not told, and especially the ones that came from my community and that came from my family. There were so many students that I was going to school with, and myself that had gone through a very rough childhood. So I was part of a lot of social justice groups. I marched in Washington. I walked out of class because I was protesting the hikes on student tuition. And I was in part of the Pan-African Council, Black Student Union, Latin American Student Union, you name it. I was very involved in campus because I wanted to lift the voices of those that I thought were not being heard. So with that emphasis, I graduated with a bachelor's in international relations. And I wanted to save the world. And the only way that I thought I could save the world was by working at the United Nations. Because, you know, you got to cover every country in the world, and why not the United Nations? And so I went and I had an informational interview with a woman who worked there. And I asked her, what do I need to do to get in there? Well, how do I work? How do I start working there? She told me, you need 2 things. You need to have a master's degree, and you need international experience. And I said, well, how am I going to get international experience? I mean, international experience for me was coming out of my neighborhood in Washington Heights and maybe going to Massachusetts. So that was international experience for me. But she said, you know, I recommend that you go to the Peace Corps. And I said, great, I'm going to research it. I'm going to go, and even better, I can save a whole nation. Definitely, this is a piece of cake. I'm going to go. So 7 months after I graduated, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras. The site that I was assigned was in Mazaguara, in Tibuca. That is in Honduras, in the western region. It's located in a valley, and it's surrounded by mountains. But it was very hot and dry in what we call El Casco Urbano, or just in the center of town. Around 700 families, but in the surrounding villages, there were at least 1,000 families. In my town, in Mazaguara, from those 700 families that I mentioned to you, at least all of them had at least one member that had left to the United States. This was the center of town. If you go to Latin America, churches are in the center of town. very colonial part of the heritage. And I lived in the corner. And it was very quiet during the day, but when 4 o'clock came around, it was a party. The men will come and play soccer. This was an event where people were riding horses and trying to have different games. So 4 o'clock was the time when people came to town and did their thing and basically socialized as a community. When I first got there as well, I was told, I kept hearing the stories about the volunteer that created a whole bunch of latrines and toilets for one community and saved a whole community from, diseases. Then I heard about another volunteer that planted 100 trees and basically saved another community from deforestation. And then I heard about this other volunteer that built a basketball court somewhere and got it named after him. And I said, wow, I'm going to do big things because I want something named after me. I want a legacy. This is going to be my legacy. I'm going to do it big. People are going to be talking about me in my town for years. They're going to be like, that girl Jersey, she came. When she came, my town just changed. So I try to do those things. I try to work with women in doing healthcare campaigns, especially women and their children. I worked with midwives. I worked in trying to create a community garden to try to get free vegetables and fruits for the community so they don't have to go and buy them or have to travel to other places to get their fruits and vegetables. And I also worked with our soccer team. So I was trying to organize them to try to go to the mayor and ask the mayor to get them their space and get them uniform and get them all organized up as a team. But with all that work and trying to help really big group of people, I didn't feel like the hero and the outstanding person that I wanted to be in my community. The things that made me feel the hero that I thought I was when I was asked for individual help. Because I was a health volunteer, mind you, with an international relations degree. Thank you very much. People will come to me to ask me questions about certain diseases or health ailments. Whenever they will call me to come in and tell them about something, I will take my book, Where There's No Doctor. This book we received as Peace Corps volunteers, and it provided information about health issues in a very simple way. So they will knock on my door and they say, Jersey, so-and-so is having a problem. Come on over and let us know what is the diagnosis. So I went and I used to put in my cape, which was my book, and I used to go out there and try to diagnose. One of my, for lack of a better word, patients was a woman named Elena. And Elena lived in town. Her husband had left to the United States and had promised to come back for her and her 3 daughters. That promise never was fulfilled. What happened was that the community took in Elena and her girls. So the 2 oldest daughters, who were preteens and teens, were with other families in the community. They will provide them with, allow them to go to school, but they will provide them with some clothing and food. And the young ladies would have to take care of kids and maybe cleaning the house. The same happened with Elena. Elena kept the youngest daughter with her, but she was always working for other people in town, and they gave her home and shelter and food. But we knew in the community, there was people talked that Elena had a drinking problem. Elena drank, and we knew that because Elena was trying to basically deal with the situation of not having the support that she had before her husband went away, and also that deception of feeling that he didn't come back for us, he forgot us. So from time to time, Elena drank. One day, I got a knock on her door, and it usually was a kid from town. Kids are always our best buddies as Peace Corps volunteers. They're best friends. And they came in, and one came in and said, look, we want you to come and see Elena. From 1 week ago, Elena has lost a lot of weight, and her eyes are really yellow, and her belly's up to here. And it looks, and when you tap it, it feels like a drum. Can you come and tell her what's going on? So I got my book, and I went and I looked at the symptoms. And in page 238 of Where There's No Doctor, I found the diagnosis, which was cirrhosis of the liver. So I tried my best to tell Elena what was going on and that she needed health care, that she needed to see a doctor. She looked at me and basically was kind of like, oh yeah, that's nice. I'm not going, where am I going to go? We had a village nurse, and the village nurse definitely couldn't take care of this. She will have to go to a hospital, which the major hospital was at least 2 hours away, in a dirt road. So I said goodbye and I just went to my place. A week or 2 weeks later, let's say two weeks later, I got another knock on my door. And one of the kids came and told me that Elena was calling for me and that she wanted to see me. I grabbed my book again and I ran over there. She was staying at somebody else's house, at this lady in the community, and she was like in a back room somewhere. I remember coming into the room and having to kind of kneel down or scooch over to be able to go in because it was a small room, it was a dirt floor room. And Elena was thinner, she looked just so small in that big bed. And she just got up a little bit, as much strength as she can muster, and told me, just get me out of here. I need to go out of here. And the community had already put some money together so we can get a truck to drive us to the hospital. We got into the truck as best as we could, and as we were on that road, I held her hand and I just could see the pain in her face. And we got to the hospital almost 3 hours later, and I used my Peace Corps credentials, as we sometimes do in Peace Corps. I went to the front of the line in the emergency room and I said, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer and I have a patient that needs emergency care. They definitely took me around the room, and they took us to a back room and they saw her immediately. So I was trying to tell the doctor, look, this is what I think she has, because I had my book and I knew the diagnosis. And the doctor was very surprised, but at the same time he was trying to prod her with a lot of needles, and basically they asked me to leave because I was distracting everybody, because she was asking for me and she wanted to hold my hand and she wanted me to be close to her, and they were telling me, look, you're being a distraction, so we're going to need you to leave. So I looked at her and I said, look, Elena, I'm going to come back tomorrow to see you, to see how you're doing. And the next day I came back and I saw her. She was they had her in a room. She was sharing with maybe 4 or 5 other women. But her bed was right by the window, and this beautiful white light was coming through that window as she sat there, and she had this white gown they had made her wear, and her hair, the nurses had to just come and comb her hair. And I talked to her and I said, how are you? You look great. And she said, I'm doing good. Can we go home? And I said, no, you gotta stay because they have to run a few more tests for you, with you, just to see how you're doing and making sure that you're better. Please just take me home. And I said, I'll be back. I'll be back, and I'll see you back in Masaguara. That week I had to leave for a workshop at another village, and I was gone for like a week. After my Peace Corps service, I came back to the United States, and I continued to work with individuals that I felt that their voices were not being heard, that their stories weren't being heard, and especially those individuals that were in the margins, that people kind of push aside. And one of the things that I did was co-found an organization that's called Milola. Right now we haven't been as active, but we did work on empowering women of color in being able to be change agents in their lives. We did this by talking about legislation that was prohibited, impacting their lives of their families, and their communities. We partner with national organizations and also community organizations to get the message out. We also were able to talk about a piece of legislation that was coming up in the 2012 election that would affect and impact single moms and moms that had children. So we were able to get people to vote against it, and we won. We did this with community by telling our stories, by telling the stories about the woman that is serving our coffee in the morning, that is making our little bread or sandwiches in the corner that sells us our hot dogs, because these are the women that a lot of the times we don't hear their stories and are in the most need. For me, this is important because, again, it's lifting the voices and letting people know that our stories matter. Because if we don't rise up to the occasion and we don't rise up and listen to these stories and let our politicians know about them, then real change can happen, especially for us. Now I work at Miami-Dade College. I still do work around sexual and reproductive health. We're working on HIV prevention, and we have a campaign on Miami-Dade College is greater than AIDS. So I still look for that human story. I do work with large groups, but I still am most impacted with that one-on-one interaction that I have with individuals, and that impact or that change that I can make, and how I can be of service to one individual. 1 week after I saw Elena, I went to my site and I was looking for her to see how she was doing. I bumped into her oldest daughter and I asked her, Miss Elena, how is she? She told me that Elena had passed away. She passed away the day after I went to see her. And I was in shock. But her daughter was so calm. And she held my hand and she said to me, I thank you for allowing my mother to die in dignity in a safe place where she was cared for. And to me, that basically changed a lot of the ways of what I was looking for in Peace Corps. What I learned in Peace Corps was that Shiro that I wanted to be, saving the whole world, or saving a humongous group, to stand out, is more about serving one person at a time. Because I might not get the whistles and the parade, or maybe a park named after me, but I believe that I got the greatest accolade of all, which for me is gratitude. So I thank you for coming today to listen to me.